Striking gold in America is the dream of many, but do you know who's actually living that dream? Well, it's not the men in suits, but a powerhouse circle of Filipino women redefining what success looks like. Sit tight, because this is the jaw-dropping countdown of the 10 richest Filipino women in the US. And the one sitting at number 1? Let's just say her net worth could fund an entire city block. Let's dive in. Number 10. Monique Lhuillier, the bridal and celebrity fashion legacy. If you've seen a red carpet event in the last 2 decades, then you've certainly seen a Monique Lhuillier gown. She's the designer Hollywood turns to when something beyond stunning is required. From Taylor Swift to Michelle Obama, her creations have walked more red carpets than most celebrities themselves. Born in Cebu to a jewelry magnate father and a society fashionista mother, Monique grew up surrounded by beauty, but she wasn't content being a socialite. After studying in Switzerland, she enrolled at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles, where her thesis designs caught instant attention. In 1996, she and her husband, Tom Bugbee, launched Monique Lhuillier Bridal, a label that started with wedding gowns but quickly evolved into a full-blown luxury house. Her genius? She made bridal wear aspirational but attainable, tapping into a recession-proof niche where emotion drives spending. When Britney Spears wore a Lhuillier dress for her wedding, the brand exploded. Soon after came global celebrity placements: Reese Witherspoon, Taylor Swift, Blake Lively, and even former First Lady Michelle Obama. Each appearance became an ad that money couldn't buy. But here's where it gets interesting. Monique didn't stop at couture only. She expanded her fortune into home decor, fragrances, and ready-to-wear, transforming her aesthetic into a full lifestyle brand. Her headquarters in Los Angeles now houses design studios, showrooms, and a thriving e-commerce arm that sells elegance in every form. Beyond business, Monique gives back generously to arts and fashion education in the Philippines, sponsoring young designers and promoting Filipino craftsmanship abroad. She has built a brand that whispers luxury instead of shouting it, the kind of wealth measured not by yachts or tabloids but by timeless influence. But while her global empire is built out of lace and lighting, our next woman is a Nobel winner who became the face of Filipino journalism on the global stage. Number 9. Maria Ressa, the journalist who took on power. Maria Ressa, co-founder and CEO of Rappler, and a woman who built her empire not on commodities or corporations, but on credibility. The former CNN bureau chief turned media, entrepreneur turned Nobel Peace Prize laureate has become one of the most recognizable Filipino figures on the global stage, a symbol of press freedom and digital age defiance. Even before Rappler, Maria was already a force in international journalism. She spent nearly 2 decades at CNN, leading bureaus in Manila and Jakarta, covering terrorism and Southeast Asian politics with the cool precision of someone born for conflict zones. Later, she became a top executive at ABS-CBN. But her real breakthrough came in 2012 when she co-founded Rappler, a scrappy digital news site that mixed investigative reporting with data analytics and social media insight. When Rappler began exposing corruption and disinformation during the Duterte era, the backlash was instant. She faced cyber libel charges, tax evasion cases, and even a government-ordered corporate shutdown. But here's the twist. She fought back. Court by court, year by year, Ressa and Rappler clawed through the legal maze, winning major acquittals and eventually regaining their corporate license in 2024. By then, she'd already received the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize, been named Time Person of the Year, and become the academic darling of institutions like Columbia University, where she now teaches as a distinguished fellow. Her influence isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in impact. While her exact net worth isn't public, since Rappler's a private company, her platform spans speaking tours, book deals, and global recognition. To the world, she's a journalist. To her critics, a thorn. And to every young Filipino woman watching, proof that you can go toe-to-toe with power and still come out standing. And now, let's tell you a story that you've never heard of before. A comeback case study for the ages. Number 8. Loida Nicolas Lewis. The crazy comeback story. While most millionaires are born into wealth, Loida Nicholas Lewis had instead inherited a crisis. But then somehow, she turned that crisis into one of the most remarkable corporate comebacks in modern history. Born in Sorsogon and armed with a UP law degree, Loida was always the overachiever type, the kind who breaks rules politely but effectively. She moved to New York, became the first Filipina to pass the New York bar without a US law degree, and later earned her master's from Columbia. For years, she worked steadily at the Immigration and Naturalization Service, quietly climbing bureaucratic ranks while raising a family. But then came the heartbreak. Her husband, Reginald F. Lewis, one of America's first black billionaires and the brains behind TLC Beatrice International, shockingly passed away in 1993. And all of a sudden, Loida was thrust into the CEO chair of a $2.2 billion food conglomerate operating across 31 countries. Everyone expected her to fail, and Wall Street analysts even started whispering that she'd sell off the business or fade into polite retirement. But here's the kicker. Loida walked into that boardroom, straightened her shoulders, and ran TLC Beatrice better than most Ivy League-trained executives. She restructured debts, streamlined operations, and sold the company at a massive profit in 1999. A grieving widow turned boardroom boss, and not just surviving, but building a $900 million empire. Her fortune now spans investments, real estate, and philanthropic ventures that uplift immigrant communities. Through her foundation, she funds scholarships, legal programs, and leadership training for Filipinos and other minorities across the U.S. Loida didn't just preserve a legacy. She rewrote the script for what resilience looks like at the top. It's the kind of story you'd expect from a Netflix biopic. Tragedy, power, reinvention, and a finale that ends in triumph instead of tears. Loida's rise certainly feels like a corporate thriller, but our next entry moves us from the boardroom to the NASA, where one Filipina turned her cosmological dreams into a reality. Number 7. Josephine Santiago Bond, NASA engineer and aerospace steward. You know how most Filipino families dream of sending their kids to America to reach for the stars? Well, Josephine Santiago actually achieved that quite literally. Jo and her husband are NASA employees contributing to space missions, and together, the couple has built a massive $8 million empire. But how did it all begin? Let's rewind. Born in Antipolo and raised in a family that prized education over everything else, Josephine's story reads like the blueprint of classic immigrant grit. She aced her way through the Philippine Science High School, then UP Diliman's notoriously tough electronics and communications engineering program, before packing her bags for grad school in South Dakota. The plan was simple: study hard, get a good job, and maybe send money home. What happened next wasn't simple at all. Her summer internship at NASA turned into a full-time gig, then a leadership role, and eventually the stuff space documentaries are made of. She helped develop ARIS, LAD, and RESOLVE, systems that track astronauts' environments and search for water on the moon. Today, she runs an engineering division at the Kennedy Space Center, managing teams responsible for mission-critical tech that literally keeps rockets from exploding. No big deal. What makes Josephine's story special isn't the money, but the magnitude. In a world where immigrants are often boxed into back-office roles, she carved out a legacy inside one of the most competitive institutions on the planet. She now mentors Filipino students in STEM, funds scholarships, and proudly calls herself an engineer NASA didn't expect, but exactly the one it needed. Jo is not the loud kind of rich without any Rolls-Royces or private jets, but in terms of impact and prestige, her name carries more weight than most trust funds. And while Josephine reached for the stars at NASA, our next Filipina aimed for the Fortune 500 and ended up pioneering an entire new category of private equity. Number 6. Juan Ling Martello, global C-suite and private equity strategist. Before most executives finish their morning briefing, Juan Ling Martello has already shifted the gears of 3 global markets. Her story begins in Manila, where a math-savvy Filipina from UP Diliman realized early that numbers could move not just spreadsheets, but economies. After earning her MBA at the University of Minnesota, She joined global giants like Walmart International and Nestlé, taking on CFO and senior finance roles that put her at the nerve center of multi-billion-dollar supply chains. She wasn't just tracking performance. She was rewriting how these corporations deployed capital across continents. Eventually, that corporate precision turned into private equity muscle. Wan Ling became a founding partner at Baypine Capital, a Boston-based private equity firm managing multi-billion-dollar assets across retail, CPG, and tech. Think of her as the quiet power behind the boardroom glass, the kind of strategist who can pull strings that move markets. Wan Ling Martello portfolio now spans North America, Asia, and the Middle East, with stakes in logistics, green tech, and digital commerce. What makes her fascinating isn't just the wealth, it's the strategy. Wan Ling represents a rare breed of Filipinos who aren't known for showy businesses or celebrity ventures, but for intellectual capital, the kind that quietly compounds into equity and influence. Wan Ling's network reads like a global finance who's who, with board positions at Alibaba, Stellantis, and even early advisory roles for Uber. Philanthropically, she channels capital back into education and trade initiatives connecting Asia and the US, sponsoring Filipino scholars in international business and finance. And now, after conquering Nestlé's balance sheets, we move to a woman who balanced something far trickier: motherhood, ambition, and a startup that rewrote Silicon Valley history. Number 5. Sheila Lirio-Marcello, CareTech pioneer and policy native founder. It started with a mother, a laptop, and a childcare problem no amount of corporate planning could fix. Enter Sheila Lirio-Marcello, who not only solved that problem but also turned that moment of frustration into the world's largest caregiving marketplace and rewrote how the world thinks about care. Born in Baguio to a family of educators, Sheila's journey was shaped by two forces: empathy and ambition. After earning a double degree in law and business from Harvard, both, she spent years working in consulting and corporate leadership before hitting a personal pain point, struggling to find reliable childcare while juggling career and motherhood. Instead of just venting about it, she did what great founders do. She built the solution. In 2006, Sheila launched Care.com, the world's first large-scale marketplace for caregivers, connecting families with babysitters, tutors, and elder care professionals. What started as a side idea grew into a global platform spanning 20-plus countries, serving millions, and going public in 2014. 6 years later, it was acquired for nearly $500 million, the kind of exit that cements legacies. But here's what separates Sheila from the Silicon Valley stereotype. She didn't just build a tech company, she built policy into the product. As one of the few immigrant women to take a company public, she used her platform to advocate for paid family leave, childcare support, and women's empowerment in tech. Today, she runs new ventures like Proof of Learn and Ohio.ai, merging education, blockchain, and caregiving into next-generation ecosystems. Her influence now extends into angel investing, education advocacy, and social innovation, the kind of empire that turns compassion into capital. Next up, we have a woman who traded tech for tradition and turned liquor into a living piece of Filipino history. Number 4. Olivia Limpiao, the spirit of a 170-year empire. Olivia Limpiao is a woman who's literally bottling Filipino heritage, one barrel at a time. As the fifth-generation CEO of Destilería Limtuaco and Company, the oldest distillery in the Philippines founded in 1852, Olivia took a family business that survived wars, colonizers, and decades of market shifts, and turned it into a modern, export-ready brand for the global stage. When she took the reins in the early 2000s, Destilería Limtuaco was already known for classics like White Castle whiskey and Maria Clara sangria. But Olivia didn't settle for nostalgia. She introduced the Philippine Craft Spirits line, liquors infused with local flavors like calamansi, mango, coffee, and cacao, turning each bottle into a liquid postcard of Filipino identity. And she wasn't content with just local shelves either. She's since pushed these bottles into the US, Australia, and Asian markets, openly declaring exports as her next frontier. Under her leadership, the century-old distillery evolved from family-run tradition to a professionally certified operation with ISO standardized quality systems and expanded plants across and beyond Metro Manila. She's the first woman in her family to helm the business, and she's taken that milestone seriously, championing fair taxation, industry modernization, and the idea that heritage brands can compete internationally without losing their soul. Beyond liquor, she's also the publisher of Foresight Book Publishing, a quieter reflection of her cultural streak. In media, Olivia is portrayed as an iron lady of the spirits industry, elegant but unflinching, a reformer who can debate tax law as easily as she can recommend the perfect whiskey pairing. She's not a tabloid type. There are no scandals or theatrics, just a relentless vision to make Filipino spirits something the world actually drinks. And if Olivia mastered the art of bottling history, our next powerhouse laid the foundations of modern Wall Street, and she did it decades before Asia became the world's favorite investment story. Number 3. Lhuillier Clemente, the Wall Street pioneer. When most of Wall Street was still squinting at Asia through the fog of post-war economics, Lhuillier Clemente saw the future. Lhuillier's story starts with intellect and nerve. A UP Diliman economics graduate turned Ford Foundation executive, she earned her master's at the University of Chicago, a powerhouse in economic thought, before deciding that instead of working in global finance, she'd rather reshape it. So, in 1976, she launched Clemente Capital, one of the first woman-led investment firms in New York, with an audacious focus, bringing U.S. money into Asian markets before anyone else dared. Her firm went on to manage billions in assets at its peak, pioneering cross-border investment vehicles that opened the floodgates for future private equity and venture capital flows between America and Asia. At a time when female fund managers were rare and Filipino ones nearly unheard of, Lhuillier built a reputation as a market architect, a quiet force whose decisions rippled through indices and economies alike. But she didn't stop at managing capital. She cultivated it. Through her foundation, she's funded scholarships, leadership programs, and educational institutions designed to equip the next generation of Asian American thinkers and financiers. And while Lhuillier taught the U.S. how to invest in Asia, our next Filipina cracked the code with silk, stitching finance and fashion into one unstoppable empire. Number 2. Josie Nattori, fashion and manufacturing queen. When most people retire from Wall Street, they buy art. Josie Nattori decided to become the art herself. Born in Manila, she was the kind of overachiever who could crunch numbers as easily as she could sketch designs. After moving to New York for college at Manhattanville, she joined Merrill Lynch and shattered glass ceilings as one of the firm's youngest female vice presidents, back when Wall Street was still an old boys club. But her defining move came in 1977, when she swapped stocks for silk. Literally. After a friend sent her a set of embroidered blouses from the Philippines, Josie realized something no one else did. The artistry of Filipino craftsmanship deserved a global stage. So she launched the Nattori Company, a luxury fashion and lifestyle brand blending Eastern heritage with Western design. By 1983, her lingerie and resort lines were gracing the racks of Bloomingdale's and Saks, redefining what made in the Philippines meant in fashion. Unlike many designers who outsource production overseas, Josie built her own manufacturing operations back home, employing over 500 Filipino artisans. Her empire now spans home decor, fragrance, and ready-to-wear collections, but its backbone is her vertically integrated model that sustains livelihoods and exports Filipino artistry to the world. She's been decorated with national honors like the Order of La Candula, and her son Kenneth now helps run the company, keeping it both a business and a cultural bridge. The Nattori name doesn't just represent luxury, it represents legacy. And while Josie's empire flows with elegance and discipline, the number 1 rank on our list belongs to someone who turned Silicon Valley into generational wealth, the crown jewel of Filipino-American success, and the quiet billionaire who turned silicon into legacy. Number 1. Susan Ocampo, the crown jewel of Silicon Valley. Susan Ocampo's story is what happens when brilliance meets boldness and refuses to blink. While many dream of breaking into Silicon Valley, she walked in, built a semiconductor empire, and then IPO'd it into history. Born and raised in the Philippines, Susan moved to the US in the early 1980s with a head for numbers and an instinct for innovation. In 1984, she co-founded a semiconductor company called Ressa Microdevices in California. A bold move in an era when the Valley was dominated by engineers named in history books, and women were still fighting to get a seat in the lab, let alone the boardroom. But Ocampo was not there to assist. She was there to lead. As the company's CFO and treasurer, she became the financial architect behind its rise, steering it through R&D breakthroughs, scaling production, and securing supply chain partnerships across Asia at a time when global chip fabrication was still in its infancy. Under her stewardship, the firm grew from a scrappy component manufacturer to a world-class semiconductor supplier, culminating in a landmark IPO in 2000 that cemented her place among Silicon Valley's quiet powerhouses. But here's where her story truly bends expectations. When the company was acquired in 2007, Susan didn't retire or fade from the radar. Instead, she reinvested her windfall into the very ecosystem she helped build. Through a web of venture vehicles and private stakes, she positioned herself at the center of next-gen chip innovation. From AI accelerators and data center processors to energy-efficient sensor networks that drive everything from autonomous cars to smart cities. By 2025, her net worth is estimated at over $2.3 billion, with a significant equity position in MACOM Technology Solutions, one of the most promising names in the global AI hardware space. Yet, despite her immense wealth, Ocampo remains grounded. And no one even knows what she truly looks like. In the end, most fortunes are inherited or discovered. But the Ocampo legacy? It was engineered, one chip, one breakthrough, and one generation at a time. And this concludes our journey through the 10 richest Filipino women in America. Which one of these female moguls impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, take a look at the channel.